Lots of guests, lots of long episodes.
Lots of long episodes. So we wanted to talk about some, we were going to talk about a specific movie, and then we kind of figured out that we had seen a gaggle of a similar genre of movies.
Yes, we have.
So I don't know if you wanted to talk about things one by one, but I'm just going to name off the top the movies that we were going to be discussing in some degree tonight. So we've got Uncharted with Tom Holland.
Yep.
We have The Lost City with Sandy Bullock and Channing Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also saw, just for brief comparison, both Treasure Planet.
Okay.
For the first time.
Oh, really? Okay.
And Atlantis.
Okay.
Probably for the first time all the way through.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a good night to have treasure. Yeah, treasure movies. I mean, The Lost City is kind of a treasure movie.
Sure.
Yeah. Sandra Bullock is a treasure. That's what I really meant.
Right. Sure. There you go.
Yeah. So I saw Atlantis as part of my 2001 list, and I saw Treasure Planet as part of my 2002 list. Yep. Again, we'll talk about them as we go, but that's why I've seen them. That's why I sat down to actually watch them, like by myself as an adult, except for seeing the first act with my kids and then coming in after the midpoint and all that stuff. So
right.
When did you see Uncharted?
Oh man, I saw Uncharted. It's been a few weeks ago now, but it was I watched it on my computer, so I was streaming, and yeah, it was it was a fine experience. I mean, nothing to say about a streaming experience other than I watched it from the comfort of my own surroundings, and then The Lost City also was streaming on Paramount Plus, I believe.
Yeah, that's where I saw it too.
Yeah, so I watched it there. But yeah, I saw The Lost City more recently, and Uncharted, like I said, a few weeks ago.
Okay, well, I assume you've seen the two Disney films I mentioned.
I have, but it's been a long time.
All right, so of the four movies tonight, which one did you enjoy the most that you recall?
If memory serves, Treasure Planet, I enjoyed the most.
Of all four?
Of all four.
Okay, what about the two live action ones?
I gave them both the same rating.
Which was
1 star.
Oh. Oh no.
So I didn't enjoy them.
Okay. All right, let's talk about, I want to hear about Uncharted because I haven't seen that at all, but I had not heard good things. Can I briefly say what I know of the video game?
Yeah, please do.
It's awesome.
That is correct.
All right.
You are not wrong.
That's all I got.
Have you ever played any of it, or you just know through osmosis that they're
mostly through osmosis?
Okay, gotcha.
Through osmosis, I know that it's great. I have, from what I have played, it's really fun, and it's one of those games that, at least for me, was. And granted, y'all, I'm at least 10 years behind in video games, but that was one of those games for me that was like, oh, cool, the physics of these are getting more interesting, and more realistic, perhaps, and away from like silliness, and there's a big part of that game that is like, you're standing on something that moves, so you might lose your balance and stuff like that. That's not normally a factor in video games.
Yep.
And I just sort of liked how immersive it felt, I suppose. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think of like moments where the character stumbles and you can kind of feel that the character's sluggish in the gameplay. He's tired, that sort of thing. So yeah, like that's definitely an element. To me, the Uncharted games are basically just movies. They're very story based, and they're very involved. Like, so you have a moment where you're playing and then it goes to a cutscene, and the cutscene might be like 10 minutes long, but you don't care because it's engrossing. And then like it comes back and you'll play for a little bit. And then, but even the gameplay is laced with dialogue. So you're learning constantly, and there's exposition dumps while you play. The characters are just kind of like chatting with one another, which is a great way to build character. And so like for me, and granted, I was really late to the Uncharted franchise. They released a compilation of the first 3 games on PS4, and that's where I first experienced all the games. I've always wanted to play them, but I've never owned a PlayStation until PS4. For whatever, well, that's not true. I did own a PS2 when I was a kid, but I didn't have Uncharted, and so yeah, like PS4 was my first exposure to it, and then I played all three in the compilation, and then the fourth. I know there's like a spin-off game. I have not played it, but they're really cool. And what sticks out to me most is the story and the characters. The characters being the most important thing. Nathan Drake is, for my money, is the modern Indiana Jones. There has not been a character that has been able to capture what Indiana Jones was as effectively as Nathan Drake, while still moving the needle forward. So that brings us then to this movie. Now, this movie had a really long development cycle, with directors and actors coming in and leaving, coming in and leaving, coming in and leaving. It was like, we hear reports like start of filming April 7th, and then it would be pushed to like October, and then the director's gone. And so it's like that over and over and over and over. So by the time this actually happened, I think a lot of people had grown tired of it and kind of were like, I don't even know if this is going to happen, but it did. And it came out just this year. It stars Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, as well as Antonio Banderas and a few other folks as well. And
Mark Wahlberg is not Nathan Drake.
That is correct. Although, interestingly enough, he was cast as Nathan Drake when David O. Russell was going to be directing the film. And then as time went by, they eventually called him and were like, hey, we're going to do the movie. And he was like, cool. And they're like, oh, by the way, you're playing the old guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
you're
we've
40,
recast.
So. Yeah,
exactly. But here's the problem with it is like those characters, Nathan Drake and Sully, Victor Sullivan, they are in the games both older, and so this is
50.
Yeah, this is the tried and true Hollywood style right now, where it's like this isn't the character but they're going to become them by the end of the film, which is like the lazy man's way of writing a screenplay, because it's built in character development that you don't have to try towards.
Yeah, this started with Star Trek, didn't it? You think?
Well, I would say maybe it started with like Casino Royale. It's like, it's not quite Bond, but like he's getting there. You can see the wheels are in motion. He's going to become James Bond. Yeah. And then as it progresses, he will become the James Bond that you know. And then like, Man of Steel took that approach. Well, it's not Superman yet. It'll be Superman. And it's like, yeah, well, that's just because you couldn't think of a good story to write with this character. So you said, let me make this character be not this character and then turn into this character, so that it gives the illusion that I've done some really clever character development.
So that I don't have to be the latest writer to get fired from this film and perhaps my name scrubbed from the credits. And
let's not forget, this is a Sony project. So casting Tom Holland is kind of a no-brainer. He's their most bankable star right now. So it just kind of makes sense. Although there are plenty of people who were gunning for this role, not the least of which is Mark Wahlberg, but also, Nathan Fillion was gunning for it. He created a short film, which was actually pretty good, and captured the games well. So, I mean, it makes sense that they cast Tom Holland, but as I'll get to in a minute, it also makes no sense that they cast Tom Holland.
No, it's one of those things that goes, it's just because you're Sony and he's Spider-Man right now.
Yeah.
The same reason I'm imagining that, Paramount cast Tom Cruise as Jack Reacher. It's like, this isn't right for the character at all, but you and Paramount are tight.
But you make us a lot of money.
Hell, you open Paramount Plus, it's like almost all Tom Cruise. The Top Gun, exactly. Jack Reacher, Mission Impossible.
That's it.
That new trailer was cool, by the way.
It was. It was awesome.
All right. Anyway,
they should just make a streaming service called Tom Cruise Plus.
Tom Cruise Plus. Well,
it's coming.
Tom Cruise squared. He's like, screw plus. Plus is for kindergartners.
Right.
I want to be cubed. Tom Cube.
Tom Cube.
Tom Cubes.
Yeah, man. So the film's directed by Ruben Fleischer, has, a host of screenwriters.
Oh, another Sony person.
Yeah, correct. So pulled straight from Venom and given this. Yeah, what can I say about this film? So first of all, let's just start with the direction. The direction is kind of milquetoast. It looks like somebody tried to make an Uncharted movie, but also wanted to make it like a Hallmark movie. It's like the best way I can explain it is it's like really glossy though in the way that the Hallmark movies are, where there's like no film grain because it's shot digital, but you know what I mean? Like there's no texture to it. It's just flat and boring and glossy. And the action is not up to snuff when compared to the games, which are really known for extended action sequences, which are very over the top. Nathan Drake is one of those characters that like he's very lucky. He's probably more lucky than he is talented at fighting. And so you have like these moments where it's out of the frying pan into the fire kind of thing in every action sequence. It's like just when he gets the upper hand, oh, now something crazier comes around and this is going to be even tougher.
The cliff we're standing on is collapsing.
Yeah, exactly.
But I fell onto the right tree. Oh, but now the tree's on fire.
Correct. That's exactly what
it is.
I
need to jump in the river. Oh my God, there's crocodiles.
Right. And that's what you'd expect. And like there's one sequence in this film, and it opens the film, that kind of does that a little bit. But even that feels really over the top in like a campy way, not in a fun way. And there's a very fine line between those. Like you can have fun and it can be kind of exaggerated, but once you cross the line from exaggeration into unbelievable, then it becomes campy, and that's where this film lies. So the direction, not great. Screenplay also not great. I already touched on that a little bit. In terms of the story, it's very bland and exactly what you'd expect, but also not at all what you want, because you're coming to this with a knowledge of 4 video games with good stories and good characters. And like I said, the characters aren't the characters yet. And the relationships are changed. I mean, for instance, in the games, Nathan Drake and Sully have known each other for years. Like Nate was a kid when Sully, living in an orphanage and whatever, and he meets Sully, and Sully kind of like takes him under his wing. This like, thief mentality kind of stuff. Like we're going to go pickpocket stuff and find some treasures and whatever. So they've been together for decades. And in this, like they're just meeting for the first time. Tom Holland's, whatever he's supposed to be in this film, 25, whatever. And they're just now meeting. So like all of that history is gone. Right. And so like the characters aren't the characters. The story is just, we have to get the thing that everybody else wants, but we need to do it first because it's valuable. Not because like, in the Indiana Jones model, like we got to get to the Ark before the Nazis do, because the Nazis are going to use it to unlock unthinkable power, whatever. This is just like, hey, we want the money. So we got to get there first. Yeah.
So you're already sort of like, oh, this is a really superficial motivation to get to this thing.
It's very superficial, very vapid.
Would be fine if it was like a black comedy where like you're supposed to kind of laugh at their selfish actions, and then it might justify the story beats kind of shitting on the characters.
Or even like it might even be okay if they establish that these characters need money. Right. Like we need money. But like Nathan Drake is like a really talented bartender and presumably lifting from his clients like thousands of dollars every night, in like jewelry and stuff as he does his bartending and spouts random historical facts. And like that's what it is. And it just doesn't make any sense. Also, Nate's not a bartender in the games, just saying.
Also, Tom Holland doesn't look like he could get into a bar.
much less just be a very experienced bartender.
Like, exactly. I'd like a Manhattan. It's like, coming right up, sir. Like, wait a second. How old are you?
Right. And he's spouting facts about history. Like, dude, You don't know anything.
You know what's funny?
You were born when the GameCube was a thing.
I was watching an interview with Bam Margera. Speaking of Paramount stuff, I guess, earlier, not within the context of this movie, but I got it tied in somehow.
Sure.
I had been watching all the Jackass movies because I had Paramount Plus, and so I went and listened to some interview with Bam Margera. I found out that he can name any capital of any country, period. You just ask him, like, what's the capital of this? And he's just like, oh, it's that. He just knows them all. Like, they did it throughout this 2-hour-long interview.
Wow.
And I remember thinking, like, if I weren't watching like a person I know is real do this, I wouldn't believe this talent if I saw it in a movie. And then you said Tom Holland basically does that, a similar type of thing in this film where it's, I'd be sitting there thinking like, this is so writery.
Yeah.
What's a quick way to say that this person
is intelligent,
it knows enough about history to be like this fumbling archaeologist, but they currently aren't at the beginning of the story.
Correct.
Like, oh, I wonder what he's going to grow up to be. Something with history, I bet.
Yep. Because here's all of our character exposition right here at the front.
Yeah. Would you tolerate a bartender talking about history random to you, or just be like, cool, give me my drink and leave me alone?
Yeah, I'd be like, okay.
I'm trying to complain about my wife to my friend here.
No, you'd literally just be like, I don't care. Because somebody like walks in and orders a drink and he's like, well, it was invented by, and it's like, that's like obnoxious.
It's obnoxious. And if you want to get tipped, boy, read the room. Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, exactly. But he doesn't care about tips because he's just going to steal your watch anyway.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean,
the ruder you are to him, the more he can justify stealing all of your shit.
Correct. And that's another point. Like in the games, I mean, Nate is talented at, pickpocketing and doing things like that. But you never get the impression that he's just a thief constantly and is like always doing like he has some sort of drive to constantly be stealing things. And in this, that's kind of how they paint him, which makes him look really like sketchy and
manic.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know. I just can't get behind this hero doing this, And so I don't know. It's just really weird. And then Mark Wahlberg is just sort of playing Mark Wahlberg. Like he's not playing Victor Sullivan in the games. Sully is, an old grizzled, kind of guy. He's always chomping a cigar. He's got a big thick mustache. He has no Boston accent. He's just like, hey kid, come on, we got to go. Hey. And like that sort of thing. And he's like the guy on the other end of the earpiece who's feeding you information.
Which is why it's important he have a distinctive voice.
Right. And he's in on the action as well, but he's for the most part kind of just feeding you, like somebody for Nate to bounce ideas off of, because like you'll be playing and Nate's like running through the jungle or whatever and you're like looking for stuff and trying to explore, and he'll be like, hey Sully, are you seeing this? Look, it's like a thing and it goes to this other thing and it reminds me of this thing I saw in the journal. And he's like, hey kid, you're talking way over my head here. All I want is you to go to and like that's kind of their dynamic, right? But it essentially exists for Nate to express to the player what these clues that you're finding are, rather than having him like think everything.
Mm-hmm.
But all that to say, like in this, Sully serves no role. There's no purpose for him here. And throughout the entirety of the film, the point is that they don't trust each other. And towards the end, it's going to be like, well, we have to learn to trust one another if we're going to get along in this world. And it's just a really hackneyed, like, I don't know. Yeah, okay, in the games, they're buds. So the screenwriter's like, I don't know, what if they're not buds at the beginning and then they become buds on the way? And it's like, well, yeah,
treasure buddies.
That's like telling me how Bruce and Alfred became friends. Like, you don't have to do that. Just let them be.
It's one sentence. I worked for your father and then he died.
Yeah. And
now I work for you.
I have a soft spot for you and whatever. Whatever. And
you pay my salary.
Yes. And that's what Sully is. Like, hey, I took you under my wing because you could help me when you were little and, could get squeezed in tight places and do stuff. And like, okay, well, that's great. But then
it's kind of like Yondu and Peter Quill a little bit there.
Yeah, a little bit.
I thought you were quoting the movie until I realized you weren't. It just was a very similar explanation.
Yeah.
You got small hands, good for thieving.
Good for thieving. But you know, I mean, yeah. And so between poor direction, poor screenwriting, visual effects that are just kind of so-so and sometimes actually pretty bad compositing wise. And part of me looks at movies like this and goes, was it COVID? Like, did COVID cause this? Like, but then I'm like, yeah, but that's not an excuse. There's literally just the simplest shot is like, Nate is standing in front of an open window at one point, and there's like stars and the moon in the background, and it's just, you can almost see the outline of the green screen around him. It's like, y'all didn't even composite, or
the lighting not matching or something.
Yeah, the lighting didn't match. It was just disgusting.
We know that since we talk about this so frequently and we both research it to an extent that like you and I both know that's like a combination of not shooting it right on the day.
Yeah.
And then having a lack of time or money on the back end. Yeah,
correct. And so that's where I'm like, oh, maybe it was COVID, but it's not a good enough excuse.
And honestly, like these days, and again, like to complain about something like CG, where it's just like, well, CG is a big part of the like. It's like it's so much less expensive now to make good CG. I know that like it costs a lot of money and it costs a lot of it's a lot of render time, a lot of artists, and I know it's not cheap.
Yeah,
but it is much more cost effective because of how good software is now and particle simulations are and keying, and you've got LED walls. Is like there's a way to do it.
Yeah,
which is why it's okay to have high standards. It's if this were 2005, we're like, man, these effects look like shit. It's like, well, we're in the middle of a transition period. We're biting off more than we can chew.
Right.
Exactly. But it's 2022. Like,
we expect more.
It's entirely possible for a studio like Sony to have good effects for a blockbuster film.
Yeah, for sure. So between all of that, and then, like I said, the main actors are not well cast. Like they do a fine job with what they're given. The problem is they shouldn't be the ones delivering this, because I don't buy their relationship. I don't buy them as experience. Like you even said it. I don't buy Nate Drake as a bartender,
as an adult,
because as an adult. So because I'm also like 2 weeks off of seeing Spider-Man, and he was playing a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And
you cast him for the very reason he doesn't work for the very same reason you cast him. People know him and recognize him. The problem is he's famous for playing a teenager.
Correct. So that it's a catch-22. So yeah, I mean, like I said, add all of that up, and what it boils down to is just that it's not, it doesn't live up to expectations, because the games are so good and this is so bad. Like, this is not even like comparatively it's bad. It's just bad. And it makes it worse that the games are good and lays a good foundation. And so you think of things like, okay, when I think of Uncharted, I think of a few things. I think of a lot of gunfire. Well, in this movie, there's not really a lot of gunfire. I think of climbing and like parkour, like that sort of thing is like one of the main things. Really no climbing. There's a couple like running chase scenes, but it's not like parkour.
Well, thank God they don't walk the whole film.
Right. I think of cool driving things where like you're driving a Jeep and people are chasing you. You have to like hang out of the Jeep and like shoot people. And like, there's none of that. I think of Nathan's journal. He has this journal that he carries and like, takes notes on everything that he's doing and seeing so that the player can refer back to it later. But like, the journal is a huge part of his character. No journal, nothing.
It's perfect exposition machine.
Yeah, I think of supernatural characters. So like a Yeti might pop up in the games. No supernatural entities here. I think of compelling characters. No compelling characters here. It's just a fail on every imaginable level, and it's disappointing. It's disappointing as a fan of the franchise, and it's just disappointing as a fan of good movies. So for me, 1 star. It did piss me off.
Yeah.
And there's one spot in particular. I wanted to make sure I brought this up. I texted Kellen because Kellen's a huge fan of the Uncharted games as well.
Okay.
And so I texted Kellen and was like, you would not believe this scene that I'm watching right now. So there's a scene where they're trying to track down, I can't remember what they're trying to track down at this point. If it's, they have these 2 crosses which act as keys to get to some like next clue or treasure or something. And so Nate is following a girl in the film, the character Chloe. She's from the games, but anyway, so Nate and Chloe are like down in this like tunnel trying to follow the clues or whatever. And Sully is up top on the street level. And you would not believe he's in Barcelona, Spain. And guess where this set piece takes place? You would think, oh, he's in Barcelona. There's a ton of great scenic locations where you could set this like scene where he's hunting for something and then the bad guys come in and there's a fight scene. Mm-hmm. So like, cool, this great vista, maybe overlooking a beach, like the ocean. It's inside a freaking Papa John's.
I was going to say, is it indoors?
It's inside a Papa John's pizza. And that's how you know this is a Sony product, because Papa John's is all over the place. And I looked it up. There is like 2 Papa John's in Barcelona. But so it's not completely inaccurate. But the chances of a Papa John's being built on top of some ancient site that is part of this thing, that then he goes, like Mark Wahlberg walks into this Papa John's and there's like all these people, all these like Spanish folks in there eating pizza, and I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, and that's where it lost me. And product placement doesn't normally bother me.
No, me neither.
But with this, the entire set piece took place inside a Papa John's. This is exactly like, do you remember in Man of Steel when an entire fight scene takes place inside of an IHOP?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing.
I was going to mention the Power Rangers movie. Isn't that a Krispy Kreme?
It's a Krispy Kreme, I think. It's the same thing. And then there's like, I never saw the 2016 Ghostbusters, but I think Papa John's was like a big thing. They went to Papa John's and all ate Papa John's or whatever. And that's a Sony product, but it's very much like, of all of the things that Uncharted is, it's fantastic locales and like all these scenic things, and you're like running on rooftops and you can see way out in the distance and the blue skies and birds and what, like all this stuff that when you're playing it and you have surround sound, it's like enveloping, and it's just like this huge artistic experience that makes you kind of feel transported for a minute. And instead the movie takes you inside of a Papa John's. Like that is where we are. And that's
soul crushing.
Soul crushing. That's a great word for it. So I don't think I'll watch this again. I don't think there will be a sequel. Maybe there will be. I don't know. But the movie ends with sequel bait. Sorry, spoilers, whatever. It ends with sequel bait. And what's worse, and this is going to be the spoiler, so if you don't want to hear this, skip a minute. What's worse is like the film. Do you care, Hooper? I mean, I don't want to spoil it for you.
No.
So
especially after this review.
Yeah. So by the end of this film, they're still not like, they're friends or whatever, but they're not like Nate and Sully yet. So the film then jumps forward in time an undisclosed amount of weeks, I guess, and they're on some other thing. This is like a post-credit scene. They're on some other adventure, and Nate's wearing something more akin to what he wears in the games, and Sully comes in wearing something more akin to what Sully wears in the games, and he has a mustache. And it's like, oh, now we're the characters in the post-credit sequence. Like, that's where we're the characters. And I'm like, that is ridiculous, and I hate you for it. So, and also this movie didn't need a post-credit sequence. It's not a Marvel movie. So I'm tired of post-credit sequences, even in Marvel movies. Let's be done with them. Let's finish them completely. They're done. They serve no purpose anymore. So that's where this is, and I hate it. And okay. And this is not a spoiler, but this is indicative too of the level of storytelling here. Like I said, the whole character arc is we're going to become the characters that you know. How do we do that? We do that by literally putting on the costume of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, by the end of the movie, they're not really like the characters yet, but there's one sequence. Everybody knows Nathan Drake wears like the shoulder harness where he keeps his guns.
Yeah.
Right. There in the third act of the movie, Nathan Drake finds that thing, that shoulder harness, and he puts it on. He just finds it. Like it's just laying around. Okay. And he puts it on, and the theme from the game plays for like, just a few little stanzas. It's like, and he puts it on, and he almost looks right at the audience and goes, "There, I'm in it. I'm wearing the thing." And then like, I think he loses it a few seconds later. I don't know.
Yeah, there's always something that some video essayist referred to, but pathos and bathos, and how like bathos is like the Marvel movies do it a lot, where like there's this tendency to like right after a swell of pathos, something completely like, something will happen in the story where you're supposed to be filled with this sense of like inspiration, but it's trendy currently, or it was, to immediately then have them like be hit by something from off screen or something happen to trip them up. Like there's a big thing in Doctor Strange where like he has the cape on, and he's finally wearing like the full costume, and then like the music's playing and everything, and he's looking, it's like, oh my god, this is like the Doctor Strange shot, but then like the cape starts like messing with his hair, and he's like, stop it. And it undercuts the pathos of the scene almost immediately. Yeah. Because they're sort of going like, we want to service it, but then we want a cheap, joke with them like tripping and falling. Like, oh, because you're navel gazing, you're going to trip over this vine and fall down this hill and lose your trademark holsters. Or what came to my mind was Rey handing Luke a lightsaber and him going and throwing it over his shoulder. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, 1 star for Uncharted. If you're a fan of the games, skip it. Yeah, that's all I got. All right. So The Lost City. So this is another, it's okay, not really a treasure hunt movie, but it's a adventure on island, island or exotic location, type of thing. So The Lost City is a Paramount production. We both saw this on Paramount Plus. Because of their 45-day exhibition window that they have with their service. Yep. So considering you gave it 1 star, I'm going to go ahead and assume that you're glad you saw it on Paramount Plus. Yes. As a subscriber and not as a ticket purchaser. Yep. At a theater. Would you have seen this in theaters? No. Yeah. And so I wanted to briefly sort of like just mention, like, just to sort of continue to color commentate on this whole shifting industry. This is stuff like this is why I'm glad a 45-day window with Paramount can work. A movie like this, I think it made plenty of money. I think it's like the 9th highest grossing film of the year. It might be 10th now with Doctor Strange, but it'll only get lower as Jurassic World comes out and Top Gun comes out. Yeah. And then Thor is going to come out. But I thought that I remember I was I still have Paramount Plus because I'm trying to watch some stuff on it, and I was like, oh cool, I forgot about this whole thing with the new releases. And so I think I thought that it would work when they talked about, hey, this is what we're gonna do. I think they started with A Quiet Place, maybe. Yeah, I think so. And I remember thinking that's totally fair. It's a fair window. I know it's not ideal for many parties involved, but as a consumer, I'm like, well, look, yeah, if I'm bought into what you've got going on, then of course I'd love to be able to watch your movie. If it, if I don't care about seeing it right away and I don't want to spend $15 to see it. Right. So this film stars Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. I forgot who it's directed by. I don't have the thing pulled up. It is Aaron and Adam Nee. It's a story of a romance novelist played by Sandra Bullock who has written a string of adventure romance novels, starring essentially an avatar for herself as this doctor, as this archaeologist, and her love interest, who is personified on the cover of the books by Channing Tatum. And so they're a recurring pair in the book series. And she's kind of jaded and disillusioned with, essentially, as she would describe it, peddling schlock to people just to sell books, because writing is not her passion. She was like a doctor. Well, her husband was an archaeologist, a famous archaeologist. He passed away a few years ago. So between that and the fact that I think she said that like none of her stuff was getting published, so she supported herself as a fiction writer, but she is only able to kind of do it and live with herself because she's interlacing these love stories with actual real history and deep historical ties. And because the stories and the locales and the historical events that she is writing about actually happened, it draws the attention of an eccentric billionaire played by Daniel Radcliffe, who is like, hey, I think I found this ancient lost city, and the clues to it are sort of, I kind of got from your book. And he kidnaps her and forces her to help him find this lost city or uncover this lost city. And he's got to do it now because there's an active volcano. And so time is of the essence. And Channing Tatum is in love with her and witnesses her kidnapping and, puts things in motion and goes out there to rescue her, and they bond and the movie ends. So you gave this a star.
Yeah.
I probably would have rated it higher. I watched it with my wife. I guess I thought it was fine. I think I liked that it was just easy watching,
Sure.
I like Channing Tatum. I love Sandra Bullock. And I like low stakes. I like a low stakes, light action romp.
Yep.
So it was pretty easy to, check all my boxes for what I've, need to happen for me to tolerate seeing a movie. Sure. And it was perfect. It was perfect, light fare to watch, like with my wife, like on a Sunday or whenever I watched it.
Yeah.
But I will say there's not much special about it except that it's not based on an existing IP.
Yeah.
But where did you feel like it wasted its potential or failed to? Yeah.
So let me start with why I watched it. I watched it because I'm a sucker for treasure hunting movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw a trailer for it. Didn't know anything about it. It just popped up on Paramount Plus, and I was like, okay, like I like a treasure hunt movie. So that's why I watched it. I was pleasantly surprised that Daniel Radcliffe was involved. Did not really know that, but I really loved him in this movie. I thought he did a great job,
mm-hmm.
and watching him kind of choose scenery was maybe the best part. Channing Tatum's kind of playing the same character as the Jump Street movies.
Yeah.
And I guess that's okay.
Which I like.
It works. It works.
Yeah.
Sandra Bullock is just kind of like bland to me in this. I think the problem with it is it's not really a treasure hunting movie. It's a romance movie.
Yes.
And the problem with that is I don't buy the romance for 1 second. Not 1 second did I ever buy this romance. And what started where I knew like this is on a downward slope really fast was the film. It's got to be in the first 10 or 15 minutes. She's on stage promoting her new book, and Channing Tatum's going to come out in his wig and whatever that he wears on the covers of her books and, get the crowd excited, whatever. They're going to talk about the book. And he comes out and he's dancing to The Final Countdown by Europe. This is the exact joke from Arrested Development that Job, Will Arnett's character, does in his magic acts. He comes out and dances and makes a fool of himself to The Final Countdown by Europe. It's the exact same joke. It is lifted 100% from Arrested Development, and I love that joke in Arrested Development.
And now you hate it.
And no, I still love it. I hate this movie for it. It made me like, I literally had to pause this movie and come back to it about 15 minutes later, because I was like, I am livid that they have stolen this joke from Arrested Development.
Wow.
Verbatim, like not even
song.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same song.
A different
the
song
same,
by
like,
Europe.
Smoke Machine. It's the same thing. Like, it pissed me off. Then I don't buy the romance because I don't understand. Like, I would imagine, I don't know the inner workings of the publishing world, but I would imagine that Sandra Bullock's character writes a book, sends it to the publisher markets it by putting a man on the cover. Why that man is involved in the book tour, I don't understand.
Yeah. It's because they're so popular, and they're so clearly popular because of him, and not necessarily like he's such a strong marketing tool that gets them bought in the first place that people. If we're to feel like this is like a thing, if we're to believe that this would happen, this would be the first time in the history of publishing that a cover model was so heavily involved in the marketing. And you would think that because of that, he'd be paid gobs more money than he was being paid just to appear as a cover model, because now he has to essentially improvise and live a character for weeks cross country and turn down other gigs. You know how much you'd have to pay a cover model to retain him for like 8 months to launch a book? Books aren't that profitable. I mean, like, books make a lot of money, but like, it's not like it's a movie or like a pay-per-view boxing match. Like, the profit margin, you can give this guy $10 million to.
Well, and that leads me to my next point, which is, this is a cover model. Presumably he has other gigs. What is it about this one that's his favorite? Maybe you could say, oh, I guess maybe it was his first. Maybe it gave him his big break. Mm-hmm. Okay, sure. There's a sentimentality attached, but I don't believe he'd be in love with the author. There's nothing to suggest that she is such a, like, she's openly, she openly hates him. I'm sorry, but I have a problem ever believing that romance begins with hate. Maybe it happens, but I have a hard time in movies where it's like, I hate him. I don't want him on this book tour. And that he's still like, I love her so much. I guess the point is he's an idiot and doesn't know that she hates him.
It's even worse in movies where like they have like a huge argument where things are thrown and they're shouting at each other and they're right in their faces. They're like, I hate you. I hate you. And then they just like start furiously making out. And like, you know, they push all the stuff off the table and it's like, take me, like all that.
But that's even worse because there's nothing about Sandra Bullock in the opening part of this film that makes her seem desirable or makes her seem like she would be someone that Channing Tatum would want to like woo and desire.
I was about to split hairs with you, but I don't know if I can. Like, it's like, I see why Channing Tatum would be attracted to a super foxy older woman who's intelligent. But I'm thinking of Sandra Bullock, not this character. But
and also somewhat like I just don't know that like there's a mentally stable man out there that looks at a woman and she says, I hate you, and he goes, I don't care. I'm gonna pursue you.
I'll win you over
forever. Yeah. I have a hard time believing that's the case, especially when, you know, it's Channing Tatum. It's not like, we're not talking about like some, I would buy it if she was the author and this was just some like, you know, pencil pusher at the publishing house who's like, I'm in love with you. And she's like, I hate you. Whatever. You're an idiot. And then he's like, oh, but I still love you. Cause he's just some nerd that has no other options or whatever, just this like schoolboy thing. But I don't get that from Channing Tatum's character. And if you're telling me, I just don't see it because you can even say, he finds intelligence attractive. I think he says that, like or maybe she says it. I can't remember. She says it. Okay. So maybe you could say he does too. He finds intelligence attractive. Well, I think that's really hard to buy when they go out of their way to make him as dumb as he is. I don't think he would find intelligence attractive, that character. So just that.
He finds
so
it attractive because he desperately needs it, for he has none of his own.
Sure. And then so that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot I can talk about that doesn't work. Like I like the Brad Pitt role. I like, that kind of stuff. I do not like that the publisher, her friend or whatever, is like, I'm going to track him down. And she goes to track him down and gets on a plane with Oscar from The Office. Like, I don't understand. None of that storyline doesn't work at all.
Wasn't a very cool stereotype for either of those characters, really. We're back with chapter 2 of the sassy black lady.
Right. And it's just, I don't know. It's derivative. It's formulaic. But the main problem is the theme of the film is that this odd couple, this intelligent, bookworm, closed off woman is going to fall for this bimbo, airheaded, hunky dude, doofus like that. That's what we have to buy, and not one time in this entire movie do I ever buy it. Not one time. And especially when the first moment where you feel where I felt like the screenwriter was trying to hint that like there might be something, is when she sees him naked, and I'm like, well, so much for your intelligence thing. Because that just destroyed your character. What you do is you have him display some intelligence that she didn't know he possessed, and she finds that attractive. Instead, he
displayed a penis that she didn't know he possessed.
That is correct. And so then after that, it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'm softening towards you. And then they go to they sleep in this hammock together or whatever, but they have this big fight because whatever, and like, I don't know. The whole thing is just, it's like, I don't buy any of this and I don't believe these characters. And then at the end, like, if the end goal is that they lived happily ever after, you really have to do the heavy lifting to tell me why this person is who she would want to be with after her incredibly successful archaeologist husband passes away. She's going to be like, I think I'll go with the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Tell me why. And also, I don't know that ever happens much. Somebody who like has a successful marriage and then loses, becomes a widow or a widower, usually chases somebody similar. Through no fault of their own, it feels to me like, generally speaking, they're looking for what they lost. Not the complete total opposite of it. That's what you do if the archaeologist husband left her. So the romance does not work for me one bit at all. The B plot does not work for me one bit at all. And it should have just been the Brad Pitt, Daniel Radcliffe movie. And that would have been fine. Now, having said that, there are a couple of funny jokes here and there, mostly from Channing Tatum and his performance, but that to me, like, that doesn't save it. So that's where my issues with the film lie. It's in the central romance. I don't buy it.
But if you are a Paramount Plus subscriber and you're looking for something that is super easy, it's there.
There you go. Also, can I just say one thing? I don't know if you've ever seen the film Romancing the Stone. Mm-mm. It was a Robert Zemeckis movie from, I believe, before Back to the Future.
I think it was from the 70s.
And so so Romancing the Stone.
Nope, 1984, actually.
Okay, so 1 year before Back to the Future. Yeah. The plot of that film is a romance novelist goes to the jungle with a guy who's an adventurous, hunky whatever, and they fall in love. That's the premise, and it's right out of one of her novels. That's the premise of the film. And the only difference is, in this film, the male lead is an idiot, and in that film, the male lead is basically Indiana Jones.
Okay.
So it becomes more of like that romance thing where she gets swept off her feet by the guy she wrote about.
Yeah.
and she doesn't know him. She meets him in the jungle, and he saves her life, and like they fall in love.
But it makes sense because that's clearly something she's into, and now she has a taste of it in real life and is energized by it.
And in this, and she gets a taste of adventure. She's never had adventure.
She just writes about it.
She just writes about it. And she's not like some super brilliant archaeologist or whatever. She just writes romance novels, and that's it. And she goes off and finds this man who's essentially Indiana Jones and falls for him. And in this movie, they took that character and said, okay, let's split him. He's an idiot on one hand, and the other hand's Brad Pitt, but we're going to kill Brad Pitt. Sorry, spoiler alert. The point is, it's he lives. Well, this is true. Inexplicably.
Another horrible post-credit scene, mid-credit scene.
Right. Yeah, it does. It's not necessary and confuses everything. But yeah, so I'll just say, like, I love Romancing the Stone. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember really loving it. This is kind of the same thing.
Boy. And
Romancing the Stone has Danny DeVito, so instantly better.
Is he the Daniel Radcliffe character?
He's like the villain, but he's not like the Daniel Radcliffe for sure. But they're both short men, so sure. And Michael Douglas.
They're both named Dan.
Yeah, they're both. There you go. So that's it. So this film just straight up copied Romancing the Stone and made it worse.
Wow.
It kind of is like they said, what if Romancing the Stone was a comedy?
Yeah.
Romancing the Stone is an adventure movie. It's an action adventure movie.
Sure.
But The Lost City is a comedy first.
Dang.
And so in doing that, you lose the romance of it because you play it all for laughs.
Romancing the Stone has an 85 on Rotten Tomatoes.
What does The Lost City have?
The Lost City has a 79.
Really?
Wow.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Well, still, I love Romancing the Stone, so.
Yeah, The Lost City doesn't sparkle quite as brightly as some classic treasure hunting capers, but its stars screwball chemistry make this movie well worth romancing. That's not even well written.
No.
What happened to this website?
I have no idea. But so my recommendation is you can check out The Lost City because you have it and you have Paramount Plus. Yeah. Sure. Let me see if Romancing the Stone is streaming anywhere.
The audience says, with lots of laughs and some likable stars, The Lost City is a fun, lighthearted adventure that passes the time painlessly.
Speak for yourself.
Oh my God.
Wasn't painless to me. But I would say, like, if you have HBO Max, Romancing the Stone is there.
Okay.
Check it out.
God, that's such a backhanded compliment. Well, it passes the time painlessly. Is that what a movie's supposed to do?
I didn't want... There was an hour and a half where I didn't want to murder myself. I guess it was a good movie then.
All right, well then let's... I don't have too much to say about these other two films. Yeah. I just saw them recently.
Yeah.
And I thought that they would mix in well with what we were talking about. Yeah. I don't know that they do at this point because they're better than these two movies. Yeah. But I think they have very similar strengths. I mean, like Atlantis, I thought it held up really well because I was like, okay, I haven't seen this all the way through. I don't know how cool, how good the story is. The story is great. The characters are all really distinct. Mm-hmm. The voices are all good. The animation's really cool. That mixture of 2D and 3D animation that Disney was starting to do more and more in this era was really worked for me. I mean, I love the production design. I love the whole aesthetic, like all this steampunk, like here's all these ships that definitely didn't exist during this time period, but who gives a shit? Right. Yeah. You've got Michael J. Fox as Milo Thatch, who's, has the key to discovering the lost city of Atlantis, and he finally gets in with like a crew to take him there, and then halfway there, directly at the midpoint, you sort of find out that all the military people actually all of them really are there for different reasons. They all double cross them, and then only some of them that you like decide, no, we shouldn't have double crossed them, and then they fight the general, and of course they find Atlantis, and he can speak to them because he can read the journal, and it's like this whole. I read some stuff. There's like some white savior criticism about the movie, I guess, but but it's a really cool movie, and I don't even buy the white savior criticism because like obviously Milo is white and the Atlanteans are not, but it's more that like Milo just has an earnest motivation for wanting to discover Atlantis. Like, he's not there. You know, he obviously leads people there who have bad intentions, but he is sort of like, oh no, I just want to be here because I wanted to see Atlantis. I don't even really want credit for discovering it. And by the end of the film, he's like, people don't need to know that we ever found Atlantis. Like they cover it up and they don't, you know, so there's no glory or anything. But yeah, the characters are all really well defined. Animation's great, pace is great, writing is great. James Newton Howard's score is allowed to frequently take center stage. And you're with the main character. You're with him from the steam room that he's in, and all the professors who are mean to him, and nobody likes him, even though he like has this, you know, he has the golden ticket to get this expedition to this once in a lifetime find. And it's a really fun movie.
I really love the character design in that movie. Like the thing that comes to mind is everyone's got these like really square fingertips. And like flat looking hands. And it's just really cool. Really stylish. And,
I like that too.
And a little bit different for a Disney movie.
Yeah. No, I think Atlantis is great. Like I had seen it in bits and pieces, like with my kids, because I just knew like, oh, Disney Atlantis, and I'd like watch it every now and then. I'm like feeding one of them, and they're like, all right, well, now I gotta go, you know, cut the grass or something.
Is it Leonard Nimoy in that movie too?
He is. Sorry, he is the king. He's the king of the Atlanteans.
Okay.
This was Jim Varney's final role.
Is it really?
This was his final role.
Okay.
The last project he voiced was this film. I think it's dedicated to him. Yeah. James Garner's the general. Anyway, it's a cool movie. I like Atlantis a lot. I think there's a lot to like there. And then you got Treasure Planet from 2002. Again, which I'd seen sort of pieces of. I definitely saw the marketing. I remember the marketing. Treasure Planet is Treasure Island if it were in space. And again, Disney was really into this at this time. Lots of steampunk. You got a robot character voiced by Bobcat Goldthwait for some reason, who pops up in the middle of the film. Yeah. And of course does that thing where he talks and he occasionally screams. Yep. And that's what Bobcat Goldthwait does.
Yep.
This is, again, I don't have as much to say about Treasure Planet. It's just really cool. I could not place the voice of the main character. Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yep, that's him.
Yeah. But then you've got a lot more star-studded cast in here, but not even star-studded, just like, oh, great, that's perfect. You've got Emma Thompson, you've got David Hyde Pierce, Laurie Metcalf, again, Corey Burton, Tony J. Yeah. It's again, you know, if you know Treasure Island, you know the beats of the movie, like, but in this film, like they come into possession of a treasure map, and they're trying to find the treasure / keep the pirates from getting the treasure. And this is just another one where the animation in this movie is smooth. Yeah. Like the movement is so good. The production design again is really, 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 really creative. Like Atlantis is great and big and cinematic, and more cinematic probably than this movie is. There's just a lot of shots in Atlantis where I'm just like, wow, like this is a movie, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
This one was one of the ones where you sit down and go, you look at every character and every little piece of their design. You're like, damn, that's creative. Yeah. Like just look at Long John Silver's like his robot arm, all the stuff it can do. I was just like mesmerized. Like, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's a cool movie, and I love the cast. What sticks out in my mind is like Jim Hawkins on that like
skyboard
wind sail thing, like towards the beginning of the movie. And then I feel like I've started this movie like 800 times, I guess, when I was a kid, because I remember the beginning of it really distinctly. And like, you know, him and his mom and his dad disappearing, or Actually, I do forget that. Anyway, there's some flashback in like black and white or something, if I remember right.
I can't remember.
Anyway,
David Hyde Pierce is a dog man.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Martin Short's in it. It's really a lot of fun.
It's great.
And Emma Thompson's character is like a cat.
Yeah,
which is really cool. I just love the design and like I don't know the feel of this movie. Again, I haven't seen either of these movies in a very long time. Like probably high school-ish era, but I remember liking both of them. I don't know that I loved either one of them, but I remember liking both of them.
There's just a lot to like. You go back and look and you go, wow, there's very little in this movie that feels like a timely, like a dated gimmick.
Right.
Which plenty of movies are guilty of. And you go back and go, this is very much a movie of its time. Like we talked about with Saving Silverman, whenever we talked about that. And plenty of movies we review from a long time ago are don't age well to an extent, but the good ones have a timeless element to them and they didn't get caught up in some trend. I mean, again, I wouldn't say steampunk is a bad trend. It's just like, oh, this was a time in cinema where that was a popular way to design your film, I guess. And
mixing that 2D with 3D was very much of its time. Sure. But like, at least for Treasure Planet, it works for me because it's like, it's futuristic-y, like, whatever. Yeah. And just like the coloring and all that, like I remember it just being vibrant and just a beautiful movie. So yeah, I don't know. I love what was the name of that little dude that Mr. Arrow has that's like the little like flubber
squish thing.
Yeah. I loved that guy when I was a kid. Scroop?
Was it Scroop or is that just another character's?
That does not sound familiar, but
Corey Burton plays a character named Onus. I thought it was Anus. It's like I missed that. Let me find out what that thing's name was. Morph.
It's Morph. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was Scroop. Of course, it's a cast full of pirates like Scroop, Dinghy, Scroop.
Yar, it be Scroop here.
Scoop. Anus.
Yar, my name be Scoop, and this here me my first mate, Anus. Anus, swab the poop deck. Yeah, no, I remember both of those being good movies.
Yeah, no, they are. They're both on.
You're still thinking of poop puns. I can see your wheels are turning.
I'm trying so hard to just move past and better myself and move past this joke, and I simply can't.
Yeah.
It's really it takes concerted effort for me not to continue those digressions. Right. You know how hard this is for me.
I know.
I would say probably the better film is Atlantis.
Okay.
It was more satisfying, I guess.
Okay.
As a whole.
Yeah.
But I just there's so much to appreciate about them both, and obviously they're both very structurally solid and straightforward hero's journey, and there's very, very familiar beats, and you can watch the movie and go, oh, this is where they're sad, something's going to happen. So, so it feels very familiar without you knowing exactly what's going to happen. It's like you're going to, it's not like you're watching and you go, oh, well, in the very next scene, he'll find the map. Like you don't know the plot. You just know the beats, that we're bound, something positive is bound to happen soon. And then when they're on top and everything's going well, you go, oh, something bad's probably about to happen. And it does. How they get out of this. It's just, it's a very nice familiar ride that's what good structure is. It keeps you feeling like, okay, I'm oriented in the story without feeling like I can predict every single action that's about to happen.
We talk a lot about the 3-act structure and just making sure your film is well structured. The thing is, like, you can break the 3-act structure and you can rearrange it kind of however makes sense for you. But what's great about the structure, like you said, is it orients you in the story. It helps you understand how the story is going to unfold. And essentially it's like a roadmap to audience understanding. We're all familiar with the way that plays out. So if you follow it completely, it's a good way for your audience to also follow your story. But if you break it, it's also a really good opportunity for your audience to feel caught off guard. So doing it at the right moment is a great tool. But yeah, I mean, as far as Disney movies go, these are both really underrated. Like I don't feel like anybody really talks about these. Like they're forgotten movies from 01 and 02. It's kind of like that weird dark era after the Renaissance, but before the switch to CG. So it's weird. It's a weird spot in Disney history, but I liked both of these films when I was a kid. So,
like I said, I was exposed to them in pieces, but as an adult for the first time, I was surprised that I didn't have some plucky criticism of them. Like, well, this is clearly, it was, I was glad I'd seen them and I would watch them.
Right.
They'd be my go-tos if we're laying around going, hey, you want to watch a thing?
Okay.
So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And my kids could watch them and enjoy them, unlike some things that are made.
Yeah.
Very, very recently.
Right. Well, hey, while we're talking about Disney movies, there is a reason why I wore this hat, because speaking of adventure characters, while you're on Disney Plus checking out Treasure Planet and Atlantis, also check out DuckTales Treasure of the Lost Lamp. It's not an actual Disney animated film. It's animated by Disney Toon, that the company that did like Goofy Movie, so it's not considered part of the Disney animated canon, but it's a Disney theatrically released film, and it is on Disney Plus, and it's a lot of fun. It's not fantastic, but it's a lot of fun, and if you're up for a good adventure story, DuckTales.
Okay, well,
Yar, Mr. Anus. Shiver me timbers.
Shiver me anus. Hoist the sails there, Anus.
Mr. Sphincter, turn starboard.
No, hard to port. Your butt.
Your butt.
All right. Let's put this. Let's put this to bed. All right.
I
Dustin,
ruined the button.
We did. I know. I did. All right. Good night, everyone.